thank you for tuning in. I understand that there were some delays and things, so I think people will still be coming in as we get started. But you are in teaching behavior, managing classrooms with effective instruction. That is the name of this session. And this session is part of a strand on classroom PBIS. So beware that there are two others coming up. I know the presenters in both of these, and they're phenomenal. That these are things that if you're interested in classrooms, you will not want to miss. So make note of that those are coming. Because I'm the first one in this strand, I get the pleasure of giving you kind of an orientation to what's going on. So remember that you will want to find your registered sessions in Pathable under your own personal agenda. So you can go in, click on agenda, do my agenda, and it can show you exactly where you are supposed to be going and what you're supposed to be doing. You can navigate that page by clicking on different links there, and you can see sessions, you can join chats and polls and upload and see the files that have been uploaded, etc. That's all on there for you, so you can access that and play around with it. The chat function is there, and you can engage by going to the chat and typing in questions or comments. There are polls, there are Q&As, other things that are on there. Some of those are there all the time for you, and some presenters will provide opportunities for you, but just beware that they're there, and there are options and opportunities for you to be engaged, which is difficult to do when we're on our computers like this. Be careful of accidentally navigating away. If you're in looking at that and click on something, you're going to go wherever it clicks. So just be careful that while you're in there looking at things, that you're not clicking on things that might take you somewhere else that you didn't want to go right now. So again, all of this is live, and you want to kind of pay attention to that as you go through. Support is available. If at any time you need support as a participant, you can use the help desk. So up at the top of your screen, a set of navigation menus. One of them is help desk. And if you click on that, you can get help. So this is new to a lot of us. I mean, we're all used to Zoom, and we're all used to Teams and all these virtual platforms, but they're all a little bit different. And this one, it has its own unique features. So don't be embarrassed if there's something there you need help with. Go ahead and contact the help desk. So because we are a multi-tiered systems, PBIS organization, we have a set of expectations, and those are: be respectful, be responsible, be safe. And you can look through this yourself. I'm not going to read all of this, but there are things that we would encourage as expectations for everything we're doing in the event, things that are specific to being on the chat, and things that are more specific to the polls tab and the Q&A tab. So as you continue on through the conference, we want you to be engaged. Just be considerate of these expectations, which I think are things most of us would think were obvious and reasonable to begin with. Finally, as you're working with your team, as I'm talking and as you listen to other sessions, always come back to considering some basic questions. How does this compare to our priorities? What team would oversee this work? What should we stop doing to make room for this work? And how will we assess whether it's working, which is one part of it, and whether we've done it right or well or with fidelity, as we like to say. So those are the questions you're going to want to consider with every session you watch. So to jump right into my session on classroom management, I want to start you with an activity to help you start thinking. I want you to use this thought as we go through the session today. Let's pretend like I have all your money. I've got your retirement account. I've got your savings account. I've got your bank. I've got all your money, and I'm going to wager it for you. So everything you own is sitting right here, and I'm going to bet it. Here's the bet. We've got a brand new teacher, and we've got a classroom filled with, let's call them middle school kids. And I'm going to open the door to that classroom on Monday morning. I'm going to throw that new teacher in that classroom and I'm going to lock the door. And that teacher's there for 1 full week. We will be watching on video cameras. So pretend like we're in a sports book because you're gambling, but we're not watching football. You're watching this classroom. And here's what you should be thinking. If the kids in that classroom are on task 80% of the time, meaning doing what they're supposed to do, and nobody needs to be kicked out of that classroom during the week we're watching, you double your money. All your life savings, everything in the world you own, you now have 2 of it. If that happens. However, if either one of those things is not the case, you have lost everything. That's how high the stakes are for you. And clearly, what we do in schools, the stakes aren't that high every day, but they are high. And so I want you to think about it in this term because it helps us focus on what should we do. And the what should we do has got to be, we need to do the things that give us the best possible chance of making a difference. Now, I can tell you, everything I'm getting ready to tell you about today, I would consider to be best practice, evidence-based. There's nothing you could do that gives you a better chance. At the same time, I can't guarantee you that it's going to work in any particular classroom because there are no guarantees. There are only probabilities. Even if you use those things really well and they work on most of the class, as you all well know, there's very likely to be that one kid for whom it doesn't work. And if that one kid has a blowout and has to leave the room, you've still lost all your money. So I want you to be thinking, as I go through a whole bunch of things today, what would I do if I were in that classroom? Or if another teacher was there and my money was riding on it, what would I want to see that teacher doing? No guarantees, no such thing as 100%, but some things work better than other things. So when we talk about classroom management, I want you to think about everything we do that changes a probability. So if you think about it, if I'm being really clear when I tell kids what it is that I think they should be doing and why they should do that, would that make it more likely they'd be successful? I think we could all agree it makes it at least somewhat more likely. Then it's classroom management. Consistency isn't enough, but it's classroom management. So all the things we do are classroom management. And I think sometimes people think when I say the term classroom management, they think of a system. Oh, it's got to be the good behavior game. It's got to be the thing where you pull the cards or assertive discipline, or those are all strategies, but they aren't classroom management. They're strategies that we might use for classroom management. And so what I want to talk about today, instead of a program, is a set of strategies that all teachers can do while they're teaching whatever they teach every day. You needn't buy anything or set anything up. It's a set of logical teacher strategies. So let's start with this, instruction. So I started off our session today with expectations. I would not say that I taught them because I didn't. I told them. I said, hey, you're adults. Here are the expectations. Now, if I was really concerned that you guys were going to be rude on the chat and use the Q&A to harass one another, then I would have probably spent a lot more time being very explicit about what those rules were, why we had them, and examples. We can't make that assumption with our kids the way I've assumed for you. With their kids, if it's something that's important enough to be an expectation, then it's also important enough to be taught explicitly. So think about teaching as 2 parts. The first one is the expectations or rules. What do you want the kids to do? Teach them. Tell them why we're doing this. Make it real for their lives. A lot of what we call culturally responsive practices fit right there. If I'm giving you a rule, here's what we do in this classroom at this time, it's for this reason, and I give you reasons that don't make any sense to you based upon where you're from and what your family's like and what your culture's like and what your history's like, then those are meaningless. So we have to go and look at our kids and say, how do I make this explicit given who my kids are? Age, culture, history, those are all important factors in thinking what examples we'll use. But the second part of effective instruction is all the other little things we do. Developing routines, being consistent, engaging the kids, considering where I stand and when I go there and when I don't, and how much movement I have and how I say things, and all those other things are just as important as the teaching of the expectations themselves. So as we teach these, I want you to think about two big things that we're going to go into. The first one I just described, be explicit. What is it? When, where, and under what conditions should it occur? Why? And the why should never be because I said so or because the principal said so. It has to have a meaning for kids. So we want to be respectful of each other. What does that mean when we're standing at the sink? Okay, so why would we do it that way at the sink? How would that help each of us? It has to make sense to the kids. Part of that then comes to the second part, which again is related, authentic examples. The best examples we have for teaching anything are examples that kids are actually going to run into in the real world. We get that when we teach reading, and we want literacy examples to be things that are meaningful to kids, but it needs to be the same way when we teach behaviors and expectations and social skills. Teach them a range of what they're going to see in the real world and teach the critical negative examples. And I'll give you an example of one that I think we don't do well. We teach kids respect others. But you know, the example that really needs to be taught when you teach respect others is, how do you respect others when they're not respecting you? Because if you're only teaching respect others and you never talk about that, then in the real world, when someone's being disrespectful to me, all bets are off. I get to go do whatever I want because they were disrespectful first. In almost every school, if not every school, that should be one of the examples that's taught. So think ahead with your examples for how you'd like kids to be at the sink or the pencil sharpener, or when we're having a discussion, think ahead. What would be an example that would make this really be challenging for kids? Teach it. Be explicit with it right up front. I think, again, we get that for academics, but I think a lot of that gets lost when we move to behaviors, where we just simply say, here's a list, boom. For example, the sign on the right, randomly found on the internet. I don't know where it's from or what it's about, and I think we could all agree it's pretty ridiculous. But the one on the left is one from a school. I would argue it's just as ridiculous. Do the kids know that they're not supposed to hit and kick and push? Of course. I mean, I'm not saying there's not a kid out there who wouldn't know that, but by and large, everybody does. So saying don't do this doesn't help. It's like saying no crime. If I'm going to commit a crime, I'm not going to come walking down the street and see a sign that says no crime and go, oh, dang, I wanted to commit crime today. Same thing here. Kids hit and kick and push because it works. People are bugging me, it makes them go away. What we want to talk about is, what should you do when those things happen? What would be a good response? And I would tie this back to respecting others. So how do you respect others? We use kind words and actions, hands and feet to self, etc. Well, what if someone's bugging us first? That's the teachable moment for this. This sign is getting at something that's really important. It's just not teaching it using effective instruction. Another feature of effective instruction is to break things down into things that are organized in ways that'll help kids remember them. So very quickly, I want you to think about it like this. This is a mock-up model of brain learning. So down at the bottom there, you got a working memory. Working memory says, hey, I got a problem. I need to solve it. And it goes up to your long-term memory and looks for the answer. Now, if the answers are organized in your brain, so when you think of, for instance, flat tire, I've got a flat tire, what do? Somewhere in your brain is a folder, and inside that folder are lots of things that deal with tires and jacks and flats and AAA and all that kind of stuff. So what we want to do is we want to help kids retrieve the things that are important. But if you just said, listen up, kids, here are 89 rules, they're not in a folder. It's just 89 random rules. And what we know is if you don't tie rules to some sort of a folder, something to hang it onto, they don't stick. In fact, for kids that have disabilities or kids that have a tendency to move quickly and not think about these things, rules that are taught without a context are lost within 30 seconds. So here's what we do. We say, what does it mean to respect others? Okay, let's have a definition. Treat other people that we want the way we want them to treat us. So what would that look like in the hallway? What would that look like at the sink? What would that look like? What we're doing is building a set of folders. I go to my respect folder, and inside my respect folder is a hallway folder. And inside, this is very much like a computer because I'm making it the analogy like a computer. But using that analogy, think like this. That long-term memory is a lot like your hard drive. And on your hard drive, you've got folders embedded in folders. So if somebody says, can you go find any particular document? You can know how to find it. What if I said, every document on your computer must be sitting on the desktop. You're not allowed to use any folders. Now, if I said, go find that document, you wouldn't have any way to find it other than to sort. And it would probably not be found because you'd give up. That's the logic. We're trying to teach rules in a way that makes kids remember them. And they will remember them better when we teach them using a logic of anchoring, which is what we do in PBIS when we come up with those big ideas, like respect yourself, respect others, be responsible, be safe, whatever those are. It doesn't matter what they are as long as the 3 or 4 or 5 you have cover the waterfront. I like respect self, others, property because it easily covers everything. That doesn't mean that you should use those or your school should, but respect self covers all things about being responsible for myself, being on time, being prepared. Respect others covers all peer relations, and respect property can cover things that would refer to vandalism, theft, borrowing, etc. So any behavior that could occur, I could attach to one of those examples. Those are the anchors. Those are the big folders that go in their brain. Now, inside respect yourself should be a classroom folder. Hey, we're in the classroom. Do we have to think about respect yourself when you're in the classroom? Yes, we do. Why? And now we give them a rationale and we talk about behaviors and they can go in their own folders. The whole reason for having those 3 or 4 big ideas in a school and having it on a poster in the hallway is to create anchors for instruction. Yes, it also allows schools to have these cute posters in the hallway, but that's just a happy circumstance. The purpose of those posters is to remind kids about what the folders are and to remind adults about how to anchor the rules they're teaching. Every one of your million rules is simply an example of an expectation that fits in a folder. By doing it this way, we make it work better. But now you've got to take that same logic and apply it just to the classroom. We don't want to have a million rules in the classroom either, but whatever they are, they have to be anchored to things. Teach them as a context. Teach them exactly what we're doing. Organize these by location or other context to make it easier to have a few folders. Be explicit when you teach these, give lots of examples, and acknowledge compliance throughout the year. Now, we've just talked about teaching behaviors. One more thing to think about with teaching behaviors, and that is engaging kids. It's possible for us to do all of that instruction and the kids weren't listening to us or paying attention. I think we're all aware of that happening. So we also have to think when we're teaching, how do we be interesting? And that can really be challenging because honestly, not everything we teach is super exciting. It's just not. But we can do things to make kids want to be looking and listening. Not every teacher can be super entertaining, and ones that are keep kids listening. But we can do other things to make that happen. And we do something called opportunity to respond, or OTR, that helps with that. And an OTR is anything we do that makes the students think and react in any way. Anything they have to physically do as a reaction to the curriculum counts. And here's what we know. The more times students are asked to think and react, hey, look at that, raise your hand if you think it's a good example, raise your left hand if you think it's a bad example, right hand, left hand. That makes me think and react. We know that when that happens, kids are more likely to be actively engaged, looking at the teacher and doing what we're supposed to, and less likely to be disruptive. That's a big reason for doing this. And what we'd like to see is about 3 per minute if you wanted to predict success. 3 per minute isn't giant, but these are the averages we see. At the elementary level, kids hear during instruction of academics or behaviors only less than 1 per minute opportunities to respond to instruction. It's down to 0.6 by middle and down to 0.5 by high school. And there's some really simple strategies we can use to do this. I just want to show you a couple that are I think, really useful. This first one is called whip around. Now, what we use the whip around for is to get everybody with us. So I like to think back, and I always taught in a self-contained room for kids with emotional behavioral disorders. So I never had the giant classroom, except for times when I was student teaching and later in my career when I did some co-teaching. But I know that everybody rushes in, especially at middle school. They're all excited, they're talking there, and it's hard to get their brains on what we're trying to do. The whip around is a quick way of getting everybody engaged, following, and doing something that gets their brain back into the lesson. Now, there are a couple of things to think about here. One, the answers you ask for from kids need to be brief. They are not in the example you're going to see, which it makes this somewhat problematic, because we don't want this to last for a long time. This should last like a minute or less. We're going to just say to the kids, hey, remember what we talked about yesterday? Let's jump back into that. I'm going to go around and point to people down the rows one at a time, and I want you to say one word of something we learned yesterday. Go. And we just do it. And we go down the row. So I might say, name a president. We've been talking about presidents. Give me the name of a president. We go down the rows and kids might, Kennedy, Nixon, and they're just throwing out these names. And we teach them, it's okay to say the same thing somebody else said. It's okay to say pass. This is not an assessment. This is a trick we're playing to get kids' brains moving in our direction. So this is done at a private school, as you'll be able to tell by the content. And it's an example of the whip around. What I would say is, I think the prompt to the kids should have been, be very brief. Give me a sentence or less. Some kids are actually just reading passages out of the book, which again is an engagement, but longer than we want it to be.
Okay, now that we just finished the section on medieval papacy, we're going to do a whip around activity. Everyone's going to think of one thing that they learned in this chapter and in this reading. So what you're going to do is think of one thing, stand up, tell us what it is that you're going to tell us, your fact, and then you're going to sit back down. We're going to do it in kind of a quick, rapid motion. We're going to start with Cam, and we're going to go to Shelby, and then we're going to jump back up to Maddie, all the way down to Brandon, up to Lexi, down to Avi, to Sage, to you, to Zoe, and then we're going to end with Angelica, okay? So we're going to kind of do it rapid, almost kind of like dominoes. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, so Cam's going to start us off. Cam, what'd you learn?
There was lots of corruption with the popes in the Dark Ages.
Good. Mike?
Christianity had a strong influence on the medieval world for two reasons: a sense of unity in the area known as the Holy Roman Empire, and had a strong papacy that provided vision and leadership.
Good.
Pope Nicholas III created the College of Cardinals to elect future popes.
Good.
Non-Christians were told to wear distinctive clothing and live in the ghetto of Rome.
Excommunication is when you get kicked out of the church.
Dark Ages were bad because they were wrecked by invasions.
Transubstantiation is the true transformation from water and wine to Christ's body.
Pope Urban II led the first crusades to get the Holy Lands back.
Once you excommunicated from the church, you still practice Christian religion. Both compounds good and trust was like sacrament.
Henry IV got an army and captured Pope St. Gregory.
Pope Benedict XVI was Joseph Roxon.
Innocent III became one of history's most influential rulers, and his reign the church emerged from the Dark Ages.
During the Middle Ages, a series of forceful popes sought to free the church from secular control.
Nice job, class.
Okay, so that's an example of whip around. However, if I would have asked kids in my classroom to do a whip around where every kid talked that long, the first kid that spoke would have been completely off task and running off doing something else by the time we got to the third kid. This has to be quick. We want to get in just boom, 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 boom. Again, you should go through a class of 30 kids in 1 minute. This has to be very quick. Now, there are classrooms with kids that can do it like this, and it can be a way to jumpstart kids and get their brains into it. But again, if we're really worried about classroom management and we're doing this as a way of getting kids moving and keeping them with us, this needs to be much, much briefer. So let's move on and talk about the last part that's really just about instruction, I think, and that is, what do we do when kids do it right? When I'm teaching in a classroom, I sometimes use point systems. I use the good behavior game and I use other things like that, and that's fine. But here's the big idea. What we have to have is verbal acknowledgement, affirmation. I saw you do that. Thank you. That was right. You might or might not need anything else, but you must have this. It's simple. It can be done quickly. It can be done easily. It can be done repeatedly all day without a lot of effort. And it's one of the most effective strategies we have. If you're just going to look at probability that you'd make a difference, giving positive feedback to kids when they do it right gives you an effect size that's as big as anything we've got. Now, of course, you only get to use positive feedback when kids have done it right. So if you're not able to use positive feedback, that means instruction's not working. We've got to go back and do something different. And a lot of times when I've asked people about, it's very negative in here, I don't hear any positive, a lot of times the response is, that's because the kids aren't doing anything right. Well, let's put this in an academic perspective. If I said, boy, you're never saying anybody got the right answer to 2 + 2 for the last week, and the teacher said, yeah, I can't because they keep saying 5. Wouldn't we say, then maybe after the first day of your whole class saying 5 when you said 2 + 2, maybe that would be a clue that you need to go back and teach that again and be more in depth with how you do it and give better examples and be more engaging. We provide this because it's working. If we can't provide it, then what we're doing is going to have to change in some way. And that's the same with academics as it is with behavior. Now, I'm going to show you an example of a system using positive feedback, but it's done with the entire class. Now, this is something, this is a real teacher in a real classroom, and this is what they really do. The difference with this video is they know they're being videotaped, so it looks more phony than it normally looks. But what he does is he says, we've been doing this. I want to get everybody's brain into what we're doing, so I want you to do this. Pair up with partners. Everybody needs to do this. I'm giving you this much time. If you can get it done by that much time, we all get to do this. And that's so it's a class-wide contingency. If we all, but it also gives him opportunities to go around and engage with kids and give individual feedback. So take a look at this. Again, this is real.
Right, so you're going to pick an element, and I want you to draw a Lewis dot structure for that element. And as a whole class, once I've discovered and found that 20 of you all have done different correct Lewis dot structures, you'll have a demonstration for you at the end. But we've got to do this before the end of the period. Okay? So when you're ready to be checked, I want you to raise your hand quietly, and I'll come around and check your work. Any questions? Go. Got our first one. We got carbon. I'll create a list up here so you can see which ones. I'm coming to Michael. Show it to me. Very good. We got hydrogen. There's another. Saria, what do you got? Show me. Lewis dot structures. Turn that into a Lewis dot structure. All right, that's number 18. We got fluorine down. We have 2 more. 2 minutes. 2 more. 2 minutes. Preston, what do you got? Lithium. Beautiful. 1 more. We got 1 minute left. Who's going to be the one that finishes it for us? There's lithium. November, I'm coming for you. What do we got? Perfect. We've got chlorine. That's number 20. And you all, I've got a cool demonstration for you. We're going to look at some flame tests, and it's going to be really awesome because I'm going to make flames, and it's going to turn different colors, and you're going to love it.
So, okay, so think about what all you saw there. One, the teachers giving an expectation to everybody to do something regarding the curriculum. So it's an OTR. You all have to do this curricular thing. You do it in pairs, so I'm not asking everybody to do it individually. But then as we go through this, I get everybody thinking about what I want them to think about so that when I start the lesson today, their brain's already there. But I also gave them a carrot. If you get that done, at the end of the day today, I'm going to do something that you're going to think is cool. He's going to apparently set something on fire, which if you're not the science teacher, probably isn't a good idea. But this is where he's got this class going. From the very beginning, they have an incentive to think about things, to respond in certain ways with the curriculum, and it leads them right into the lesson. So the next thing we're going to think about, or the next thing I want to talk about is just an evidence piece for this. So I showed you some data just a minute ago about OTRs and how much it happens. Well, this is something we found when we looked at this. We looked at thousands of teachers, and we looked at what they were doing and what kids were doing. If you only consider these 3 things, to what degree was the teacher focused on the students? Second, to what degree was the teacher providing opportunities for the kids to respond? How many OTRs were there? And to what degree was the teacher saying positive affirmation things to the kids? So if you look at just those 3 things, we did a cluster analysis, and what you find is there are basically 3 categories of teacher when you look at those 3 things: high, medium, low. So now what we can do is say, does teacher behavior predict kid behavior? And here's what we found. If you go in and watch a classroom for 10 minutes, if the teacher in that room is using OTRs, active teaching, and positive feedback in the lower third of all the teachers we've observed, so below the 33rd percentile, we can predict right now the kids in this room are 27% more likely to be off task and 67% more likely to have a disruptive behavior. Nothing that we've found predicts kid behavior in classrooms better than teacher instructional behavior. So we know there are things we need to be thinking about doing, but the good thing is they're all things that normally happen during instruction. Active teaching is a normal part of instruction. Giving kids chances to respond can happen right during instruction, and giving feedback. So these aren't add-ons. It's not like you're also going to need to do this and this. These are things that we want to build into the way we teach all the time, rather than add them on as something separate. Let's move now and just talk about the environment. Consistency is a giant predictor for kids' success, for all kids. And actually, it works the same for adults. The more we do the same things in the same way at the same time on a daily basis, the better the predictor is for kids being able to do it successfully. Make it a routine. Every day at this time, we get up, we go here, we do this, we sit down, we stand in line, whatever it is we do. But the more you do that in the same way, at the same time, for the same reason, etc., the more likely it is that kids will fall into a habit and do it. Now, it's impossible to be absolutely consistent with everything you do every day. And I'm not suggesting that it needs to be that consistent. But you probably need to be as consistent with a classroom as the kids in that classroom who need the most consistency. In other words, it's really hard to be consistent for 2 kids, but not the other kids in the class. So you kind of have to dictate your consistency to the lowest common denominator in terms of need. Second, I like to write this on the board. So as a brand new teacher, my first job teaching was in a lockdown facility with 8 adjudicated adolescent boys. They like to argue. They really like to argue about what we were going to do. And if they thought that I was making it up, it was ripe for an argument. So, hey, let's do math. No. And it was an argument. And then I kind of stumbled upon this by trial and error, put all the times down that we're going to have, put what we're doing at those times, and do it the exact same way every day. Now, they complain at first. One, I tell them, it's not my idea. It's the schedule. Hey, it's 9:40. Let's do math. Oh, I don't want to. Yeah, I don't either. But it's 9:40 and the schedule says math. There's nothing we can do about it. And I found that big, mean kids just eventually accepted that. Yeah, you can't do anything about it. It's just the schedule. But I put this all back to consistency. We created a routine. All this did was help make that work as we went through. For every time on that schedule, there needs to be an expectation. So when I say restroom break, we all know. We line up here, we go there, we do this, we do this. Because we've said it and we've done it the same way day after day. In the ideal world, this is something we would do early in the year, and then you could kind of fade out of it as time went by. And that's probably what you'd want to be trying to do. But in the not ideal world, sometimes these things need to stay that consistent all year long. It just depends on what your classroom is like and what you're teaching and whatever other things might be going on. Third, think about how long any of these things could work before they would not work. How long can your kids do spelling before there will be a mutiny? Basic rule of thumb, don't go that long. So the one I hear most often is sustained silent reading. Oh, my kids in the resource room or my kids with behavior challenges can't handle sustained silent reading. And I'll say, how long could they handle it? 10 minutes. Okay, then do 10 minutes and stop and do something else. No, we can't. The principal said it has to be 30 minutes. You're still in sustained silent reading. But if you're going to say, I know after 10 seconds, you're going to have a major blowout and breakdown and throw a tizzy, but we're going 30. I just think that's not smart. Make your schedule work for you. I would go 10 minutes, stop. What are you reading? Tell me more about that. That sounds interesting. Anybody else read? And then have them go another 10. But you've got to create a schedule that predicts success. If you've got a schedule and you can say it's going to fail right here every time and you do it anyway, it's kind of a setup for kids. It's kind of like giving them a problem that you know they don't know how to do every day. So think about the sequencing and the length. And because we're trying to be consistent, anytime we're doing it differently, we need to explain it. It won't be the same today. We're going to do it this way. Here's why. And what I found with my kids is I had to say that repeatedly all day long because they keep going, wait, how come we're not doing that? It's because of this. This isn't a random thing we're doing. This is why we've decided to do it this way today. In terms of physical arrangements, I want you to think about proximity, how close you are to kids. but you can't always be really close to every kid. So our first line of proximity is eye contact. Eye contact means I can see your eyes and you can see my eyes seeing your eyes. It doesn't mean I can see you, but you can't see me, or you can see me, but I can't see you. It means we can see each other seeing each other. So what I like to think about is, how do I move around the room and teach, because I like to move and be by a lot of kids. How do I do that and still have the kids believing? And this is what I call the 1 second rule. I want every kid in the room to believe that I could see their eyeballs in less than 1 second if I wanted to. And I do that by moving a lot and spinning and talking and looking at someone and then moving the other way. And as I walk through the room, I'm moving different ways and I'm spinning and looking. And I do this with a higher level of paranoia, I think, than most teachers need to have. And it was pounded into me when I was a teacher in the places I taught. But I really find it successful. If the kids are thinking, can I get away with this? I don't know if I can, because he could look at me in less than 1 second at any moment. Then they're more likely to not try getting away with it. And I get to say, hey, I noticed this morning that you've really done a great job of keeping your hands to self. You're really trying hard. Now, people who know that kid would go, no, he's not trying hard. He just is afraid you're going to see him. Well, I call that effective instruction and effective management. What we do as teachers, our job, is to set kids up to be successful and give them the credit for it. That's what we do when we teach reading and math and science and social studies and health and behavior. We're using tricks from pedagogy and from relationships and from environment to make them get it right. But then we don't go, wow, I'm a good teacher when they get it right. We say, wow, good for you. We're giving them the credit. And that's what we do when we create these atmospheres to set kids up to be successful. Let's next think about the physical environment. How do you set the desks up? Well, first, teacher desks. I don't think that it's that important because you probably don't spend that much time there. But when you are at your desk, I think it's important that you're able to see every kid. And I would take it a step further. I think it's important that when you're sitting at your desk, you can see the eyeballs of every kid and they can see you seeing their eyeballs. I don't want kids having to look over their shoulder wondering where I am. I want them to know where I am and that I'm moving and that I'm keeping looking at them. So I think putting the desk up front for me makes sense because I want to barely raise my head and be able to see every eyeball. What about the kids' desks? First, I'll show you some arrangements, but first I want you to think about assigned seating. I'm a big advocate for assigned seating. As a teacher, I always assign seats. When I go and work in classrooms now, if I spend a few days with a teacher working in a classroom, after the first day, I assign seats. And the reason I do that is this. It's incredibly simplistic for me to do nothing more than assign you sit here, you sit there, if I can do that and control the probabilities for success. So I've got a lot of probabilities out there. Then if that kid sits back there, it's not going to work. And if these two are together, it's going to be a problem. And if this kid sits up front, they're going to really be able to ask me questions. And so I'm going to put them where I think I'm giving them the best chance of having me say good for you tomorrow. But I've also found that if they think I've made that decision based upon them as a person, they don't like it. So I lie to them about this. I say, come on in, take a look up at the board. See all the desks, they all have names on them. And here comes the lie. This is completely random. I just flipped coins and put people out there because I want you all to sit next to different people and have different experiences in this classroom. So what if I find out one of those was a bad idea? I try not to change it during class. I try to use my physical proximity and stand in that area more often. But tomorrow when they come in, I'm going to say, hey, look up here. I made some changes. Again, all random. I could say, that's weird. The only thing different is you moved her over. Yep. But it was a complete random. I flipped a coin. And the way you keep this going is you tell kids once in a while, I flipped a coin and made some changes. And all you changed was a kid who everybody knows never has problems. And now everybody's thinking, wow, this really is random. He's just moving people randomly. So when you have to move that challenging kid, and when you do, there's a good chance that kid's still going to say, what? That's not fair. I shouldn't have to go, hey, it's not about you. We move people all the time. And it's much easier for you to have total say over where kids sit if they believe this isn't about them. This isn't a punishment, it's random. So as you think about that, think about how you set a classroom up. For instance, rows. I love teaching in rows, but remember, I want to move around the room. So think about this as a logic. I would like to move through this room in such a way that when I entered and then came back out, I had been able to touch the desk of every kid in the room. That doesn't mean I'm really touching every desk, but I'm close enough to say something, tap them on the shoulder, make a noise, have some sort of a very, very basic engagement. If I'm going to do that in rows, this is the blue or the red line, that's a lot of steps, which means I'm probably not going to do it very often because I've got a lot of stuff to do up front. Second, where do I put the kids that are likely to have problem behaviors? We're assigning seats. Don't assign them all to the back row or all to the front row. Mix them up. But notice that I've put those kids all in places, and they're represented by the yellow stars, are problems. I've put them all in places where I could walk a direct line and end up standing in front of their desk. I don't need to serpentine through the room. I could be holding a book up and reading it and still walk right back to that kid in the back. So these are kids that I know need me more often. They're placed where they can get me more often, but no one would know it by looking at the room. We don't want to segregate those kids into one place where the bad kids sit. That will, it's unethical, I think, and it also is not a recipe for success for those kids. I hate this classroom. As you probably know, these middle areas are filled with backpacks and chairs. You can't get in there. So what I do is I just move the desks when I'm in these rooms. All this does is it allows me to get into the middle. Maybe I can walk around the back, maybe not, but I can at least get into here and I can at least reach across and I can touch the desk in front of every kid if I need to. The other thing is this actually, if I want to make a circle around the room, is a lot fewer steps than it was with the rows. Groupings of 4. Again, yellow stars are problem behaviors. All I do with the groupings of 4, and I see this probably more often than anything else, is I just make it a little easier to make a circle for me so I can wander around that circle. Notice the yellow lines. Kids with problems have been strategically placed in areas where I can walk directly to them. I don't have to go serpentining around and go clear to the back of the room to just stand by a kid and give a signal to, or say something very simple to. Very few steps here. Now, once in a while, I might walk around all the way around the outside of that circle, but I can walk around the middle of it all the time very quickly and keep a real eye on everything that's going on. And my favorite is the rounds. The reason I've learned to love the rounds is because I don't really make laps through the room as thoughtfully as I've been letting on. I'm making it sound like I have a very clear pattern that I'm working in. I don't. When I start talking, my mind goes to teaching and I'm random and I'm throwing my hands around and I'm running. And this is really more like what my pattern probably looks like. And I like the tables because no matter where I am in that pattern, I could turn and walk to a table and be there in 3 or 4 steps. So I can always have close proximity, but I'm still going to sit the kids that need me most where I can get them without having to do anything special. I can just wander by them casually. So I'd like you to think about what might go wrong with this. And the thing that I think might go wrong is, because I've had this happen, those kids that have the yellow stars that I've placed there have their back to me when I'm talking. And I found that to be a problem. So again, I love this. It's great for group work, especially, but I have to teach a rule when I do this. And the rule is when I'm getting ready to tell you something important or show you something, I'm going to give you a signal and I teach them. When you hear the signal, everybody in the room turns their chair to face me. I then say what I've got to say, talk to kids, point to kids, move around, and then, okay, work on that with your group, and everybody can turn back to their group. But if I didn't teach that first part, those kids whom I think probably need me more often, have greater needs, if they're not looking at me and I can't get that eyeball to eyeball contact, the probability of them hearing me, listening to what we're doing, engaging with what I'm talking about is very low. So I have to teach that rule to make this work. Now I'd like to, as a final kind of a piece here, I'd like to talk to you about some specific kids. And we spent some time going around and talking to teachers and asking them, while you're teaching, what are the behaviors kids engage in the classroom that are the most challenging for you, that happen the most often, that make you the most angry, that make you not like being a teacher? So you know what I'm getting at. What are the things that are really challenging behavior-wise to the average teacher? And we had 5 or 6 of those that are categorized and we talk about. But lately we redid that and asked about the same thing, but with masks, thinking about kids wearing masks. So I want to start with the bargainer. The bargainer is the kid that when you ask them to do something, they immediately want to go, okay, I'll do that if you'll do this. Okay, but first I need to do these 5 things. There's this bargaining that has to happen. And when we say no, okay, well then how about this? And so what we've asked people to think about when they confront a bargainer is when the student says, yeah, but I'll do that if, just simply become a broken record and remind them, but the expectation is this, so I need you to see you do that, please. So remind them of why you've asked that, and then just repeat the direction. Don't engage in the, well, I wouldn't have you do that. How, this wouldn't be enough to do. Don't make them believe that you're willing to bargain. Don't entertain the bargaining at all. So just stay very calm and repeat yourself. It's depending upon the kid, also a point where you want to remove yourself. Now, if the kid's doing something dangerous, obviously you can't completely remove yourself, but what you don't want to do is stand right in front of the kid, eyeball to eyeball, and they say, how about this? No, do this. How about this? No, do this, because you're still engaging them. Repeat, here's what I want you to do. Walk and talk to somebody else. Stay calm. Don't get excited, because if you do, you reinforce them. Move away and attend to others. When you see them doing it right, or when they say, okay, I'm going to do it right, say thank you and go about your business. You don't need to throw a big parade because they said they were going to do it right. Now, those are all the things that we like to talk about. This is a setup. These are actors, and I've asked them to do things in certain ways. I will say up front, I think the teacher engages a little too much. 1. 2, I think when the student does the right thing, the teacher comes over too quickly. We don't want to set it up so that after the kid bargains, the kid gets to say, okay, I'll do it right, and the teacher gives him total attention. But there's nuances here. And again, it's kind of, you got to know your kids. So think of these as big ideas. But here's what that might look like.
Hey Jay, let's get that mask on and our book open. Let's get this work finished so we can move on.
I don't have cooties, so I don't need to wear the stupid mask. And she keeps taking hers off.
Well, let's talk about other people later. First, let's get priorities. Mask, pencil, and let's get our book open.
Okay, well, if I know what my grade is, then I can put my mask on and then I can do the work.
Well, we can talk about your grade after we get our priorities straight. Let's get our mask on, our book open, and pencil going.
Well, if I know what my grade is, then I can put the mask on, and then I can do the work.
Well, you know the deal, so mask, book, work. I'll be back.
Okay, hey, what if I do one problem now, then we talk about my grade, then I'll put the mask on?
Let's get our mask on first. Book, you know the drill.
Can we talk now?
3 seconds.
There.
Yes, page 78. Good. I'll go check your grade in Infinite Campus while you do the next problem, number 3. I'll be back.
So while I think we could have a logical, critical discussion of exactly how this was handled with this teacher and this kid, the big idea is remind them of the expectation. Don't dig into the bargain and why you're not going to do the bargain. Just keep going back and repeating, this is the direction. Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. And once you've made yourself clear, move away and talk to others so you're not just standing there inviting a back and forth. When they finally do it, you're going to come back to them as you can, and you're going to thank them for doing that and go back to what you're doing. I don't know, when I watch this now, and this was something I wrote, I don't know that I would have gone over now and I think about it and looked at my grade book right now. I might have said, that's something we can do once you've done your work. I think I wrote this in there, meaning you did something, so I'm going to do something. But I could certainly see now the argument why you'd say, I'd like him to finish that work before we do the next thing. Otherwise, he kind of won the bargain here. So, big ideas were there. Let's look at another one. Sorry. The attention seeker. So, actors again, we know that kids do things that are really annoying that are only there to get somebody to have a reaction, laughter or shock, those kinds of things. And when they get that and we give them a ton of attention, whether it's yelling at them or telling them how wrong that was, etc., it reinforces it and it escalates. So what we want to do when an attention seeker clearly is seeking the attention is, first of all, remain calm. Repeat what you want them to do. Don't talk about what they're doing. Say, could you show me? And give them the right way. So we want to facilitate them. We want to get them going, but we're not going to do it for them. So it's okay to walk over and say, I'm turning the page. This is where you need to be. Could you show me working on this problem right now? Give them as much as you can to get them to do what they're supposed to do. But again, they've got to do it. Remind them what will happen if they don't. But this is tough because you want to be able to do that and not have it sound like an ultimatum. If it's do this or else, kids with challenging behaviors very often will come back at you even harder when you say that. So it has to be, if you don't get this done, as you know, that'll mean you'll be doing it later. And I'd hate to see you in here doing it later. You don't need that. That is the same thing as saying do it or you'll be in here later, but it's presented in a much different way. It's a choice for the student. So come on, make a good choice for you. I'm asking you to make a choice. I'm not telling you you have to do something. Again, remain calm and follow through. If they do it, great, say thanks, move on with your life. If they don't, say, well, I'm sorry you made that choice, follow through with the consequence. But in either way, it can't be personal to me. I can't get myself all in a tizzy and get really upset about this because it'll only play into the attention seeking. So I want to show you first the kid doing this and how the teacher handles it, but then I'm going to show you a follow-up of what the teacher does one-on-one with the student later. So again, this is made up. I wrote this as a script based upon some things that happened when I was in my career and some other things that teachers were telling us.
How do you feel if we put like the first 2 days?
Hey, how's this team coming along? Max, what's your role?
I'm not getting close to them. They could be sick.
You're supposed to be the recorder, but you haven't written anything.
Yes, I have. Here's you saying something stupid.
Max, your group just wants to know if you're going to participate to help get the work done.
No, I'm not getting close.
Look, we're 6 feet apart. We all have masks on. We're safe here.
Still too close for me. I'll sit across the room.
You have a choice. You can either take a 0 for the day or help get the work completed. Seems like easy participation grade to me.
All right. But I want to wash the table with disinfectant. Emily's dirty.
He's not going to do it.
Yes, I am. Don't be so serious.
Let's get going then.
I still want to disinfect Emily.
Anyway.
My first notes will be about how this group is dirty. Will that work?
I see a lot of groups getting a lot of great things done.
I'm writing too, but about cooties.
He's writing it.
You know about cooties?
We have about 15 minutes. Let's get all of our work completed. Get it done.
So clearly, this was written to make you think, I really don't like that kid. And it's kind of funny because you're not the teacher in this room. The teacher has to show a lot of patience here. There is a fine line. At what point does the teacher say, that's enough, you've crossed the line? And you have to know your kid. Now, this kid did eventually start writing, but he did it with a whole lot of problems. So what this teacher's thinking is, how do I get through this class period without everybody watching him put on a show? And if I engage him, if I go at him harder, it's going to be a bigger deal. So he is using all of his patience to deal with the rest of the class and just guide this kid to doing something. But it's not over because they're going to talk about it after class. And here is the next part.
Hey, Max, thanks for hanging back. I just want to talk about some of the things that went on earlier. First, thanks for getting the recording done for your group. To not get those easy points for the day would have really been a shame.
Okay.
Listen, I want to talk about the comments and the hassles in getting started. You know, today it just seemed a little bit off for you, and I really did everything I could to stay calm myself. But this was just not in your normalcy.
I was just joking, messing around.
Well, Max, I understand, and I think you have a great sense of humor. I think you're a great student. I think you know where you're going to go. You know, but it comes across as really disrespectful. In front of the other students, it's really hard as that teacher to try to get everybody refocused. And so I try to treat you with as much respect as I can, do I?
Yeah, I guess.
So I would appreciate it if you could continue in class. You can have your sense of humor, but it needs to be turned off when it needs to be turned off. And there's a time for laughter, and then there's a time for focus. I need you to understand that when a direction has been given, that the comments and the jokes really need to be stopped. And you need to be focused on your schoolwork that is given to you at that moment. Does that make sense? Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yes.
Now, let's just be real. You know, I really do like you, and I really enjoy having you in class. It really is a lot of fun. So let's continue to move forward, scratch the bad day, and move on.
So I find this one, even though I wrote it, I find it hard to watch because it makes me want to say to the kid, stop. But this is where I want to take you back to our very beginning of the presentation, the bet. The bet was if kids stay in that room, nobody has to be told to go, you double your life savings. So it's clear this teacher, I think, would have been within his rights to be a little more angry and to deal with this kid a little more harshly. But the reality is, doing that would probably have escalated this into a situation where that kid either left on his own or was told to leave. And here's why that's not what we want. There is zero evidence that having a kid be removed from the classroom or the school is a predictor for changed behavior in the future. Clearly, there are times when kids need to be removed. But if we can handle it in a way that gets us through the lesson and keeps the kid in the room and gets the work done, we can deal with this part later. If we can do that, we create a much higher probability for that kid's success moving forward. Again, I know suspension is something we need to do. I know moving kids out of the room is something that has to be on the table, but it can't be our first thing we think about. And we always have to think, is there something I could do as a teacher that would create a higher probability of this kid's success now and tomorrow? And maybe there's not. But the reason I set up the wager at the very beginning of the session is because I think that's the way we have to think about it. But is there a higher probability we could create for this kid in the future? That's the thought. So I've got one more that I'm going to go through quickly.
Hey, Max, thanks.
Sorry about that. This is one that I came up with based on lots of kids, but one in particular in my brain from my time teaching, that I would say, here's what we're doing. We're going to do this, this, and this. And this kid would say to me, oh, I can't. And I'd say, why not? Because, and there'd be some reason, I don't have a book, I don't have a paper, my chair's wet, my something, 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 something. And then if I said, well, let's go ahead and you can fix that in a minute, or I'll help you with that. Oh, but that won't help because here's another reason. And I'd say, well, we'll get to that later. Yeah, but I also need, and no matter what I said, there's another reason why I can't do it. And so here's the 10 reasons why I can't do what we're doing in here today. And then at the end of the class, when they hadn't done anything and we'd argued about it the whole time, I'd say, well, it looks like you're getting a 0 because you didn't get it done. Yeah, because you wouldn't let me get a book. Yeah, because you wouldn't let me. Okay, well, we all know that wasn't me, but it's been framed like it is for me. So here is a teacher where this is happening. A student keeps having reasons why they can't do it, but this teacher, and I would call it this, goes on the goose chase. Every time the kid has a reason, the teacher comes back at this kid with a, no, you don't have that reason. And it just becomes a back and forth until it blows up. We'll show you a better way, but let's look at it this way first.
Class?
Yes.
Class, class?
Yes, yes.
All right, it's time to start our letters. You have 20 minutes. I'm going to start the timer now. Please begin. Sydney, get out your paper and get started.
I don't understand.
We've discussed it. You know the assignment. Get started.
I don't have a paper.
I gave everyone a paper. You do have a paper. Get it out and get started.
I don't have a pencil.
You have a pencil in your desk. Get it out and get started.
I'm not using this.
You are going to use it or you're going to get a 0.
I'll go to my locker then.
No, sit down and use the pencil and the paper that I gave you and get started.
Discuss how the teacher handled the situation.
Okay, so the teacher gives a direction. The student says, I can't for this reason. The teacher says, that's not true. You get it. Yes, you do it. Okay, well, then I don't have this. Yes, you do. Do it. Okay, well, then I don't have this. Yes, you do. Do it. All of this is just goes on and on and on. And it becomes the student is actually leading the teacher. The student makes the teacher respond over and over. What we want to see when we get into this kind of a kid, this always has an excuse not to comply, is when they give you a reason, here's why I can't do it because of this, then you give them a new direction. So I can't do it because I don't know how. Okay, when you have a paper out, then I'll come over there and I'll go through the directions with you again. Well, I don't have a paper. Okay, borrow one. I've got one right here. When that paper's out and your name's on it, and they're going to keep saying, but I, you have to find something they can do. And I've said to kids as much as, okay, when I see you sitting straight up in your desk and your arms folded in front of you, then I'll come over and talk about that. But the idea is they have to follow a direction in order to get me to do something. You don't get to make me answer to you all around about these different possibilities. You tell me you got a problem and I'll say, and I'd like to help you with that problem. You show me this, I'll help you with it. Now at the end of class, if they go, I got a 0 because you wouldn't let me. I said, no. I told you I wanted to help you with it if you did this. You chose not to do that. I was offering all kinds of help that you chose not to accept. So you have to give them some behavior of compliance before you go to the next step. Otherwise, again, all you're doing is this wild goose chase where they're going to just keep coming up with reasons. But I got to call the doctor and I need to see the nurse and I need to go to my locker and I need a drink and I'm not going to be able to do this until I talk to her. Nope. We will go through your list of things you think you need one at a time. And each one you will need to do something to show me that I can deal with that next one. So once we get the paper, we're not going to talk about the next thing on your list until you do something else. You get one problem done, then we'll talk about that getting a drink. Okay, then you do the next thing I want, then we'll talk about. So I may not do all the things you want to do on your list with you, but I will talk about them when you follow the direction. So it's up to you. You control it. So,
Terry?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. People are just so enjoying the presentation, and there's some questions that really wanted to bring up if I could. Is that?
Absolutely. That was my last slide. So I can't see questions or things on my screen. So
right, I can just mention it. So one of the questions several people have been asking about the use of the videos. Are they available, and can they use those within their own settings?
Right here on the screen where it says Cybers, cibrs.com has a ton of video. It may not have the actual videos you've seen today, and I'm trying to think back. It may or may not, because some of these are real kids and some of these are contracted, and so I can't always share everything. The Cybers Center for Instructional Behavior Research in Schools has a contract to put video up, and we're producing it all the time. I will tell you, the website is horrible, and we are right now in the middle of contracting to have it redone so that it's easier to use. But we will have videos on there that cover all the content I'm covering today at some point, probably this year.
Thank you. And another question, some folks were saying that the slides are wonderful and they'd like to use those in their own setting. Is there any problem with people using your slides in settings?
Absolutely. Go for it. Whatever helps do what you need to do is fine.
Great. And I think many comments of people appreciating the examples, using the explicitness in teaching, and they just really appreciate your presentation. So thank you so very much.
Thanks for allowing me to have the opportunity to do this. I think every year the forum is probably my favorite thing. I wish it wasn't virtual right now, but I'm just really happy to have had the opportunity to be involved and talk with you all. And I need to show you the evaluation slide. So you have a QR code that you can scan and go directly to an evaluation. And after each session, you're going to see one of these, so you can continue to do that throughout the conference.
And the chat is filled with many thanks and excellent and amazing. And so thank you.
Great. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Is there anything else, Steve or Kim, that I need to do?
I don't see any other questions coming up. So I think this was perfect. Kim, would you add anything?
No, just thank you, Terry. You're part of the fabric of this forum, and I know many people are commenting on how they look forward to your sessions each year, so thank you.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. Let me know. My email address is on the slides. If you need anything, email me, let me know.
Great, thank you.
All right. Bye.